Hi, I'm Dan, and I want to talk about school phobia, which might seem a bit odd because I'm 47. But from the age of 5, from my very first day at school, until around the age of 25, I was extremely school phobic. And you're probably thinking, how was he school phobic age 25? Well, more on that later. I'll explain why. It's a long story. But what is important is that I'd say my long experience and what has happened since then definitely makes me something of an expert on being school phobic. The good news though is that I got through it, and I promise that you will get through it too, even if your school days like mine seem like the worst days of your life, not the best days of your life. And that doesn't mean that like my whole childhood was miserable, just the school part was just the worst thing. So I'd like to help you understand this fear and maybe work through it with some useful tips, some advice, and some tools who's from someone who's been there and had it change their life. So it's such a massive topic that I'm going to split it into lots of smaller videos. So like exploring what is school phobia, understanding what's going on, and importantly how we can work to get through it. So don't skip straight to the tips and advice. In fact, I probably haven't even shot those yet because it is really important you understand what is going on first. Um, I just want to be clear for anyone watching it that isn't sure what school phobia is. School phobia isn't just not liking school. Loads of people don't like school, loads of people don't like Marmite, and loads of people don't like rugby. But that doesn't mean they're actually afraid of Marmite and rugby or school if they don't like it. So you can dislike school, I mean, apart from learning some interesting stuff. Sitting at a desk for 15 years is not that, is not that great. So I understand a lot of people don't like school, but that doesn't make you school phobic. And equally, you can be school phobic and bizarrely not dislike school itself. So I, I was school phobic, but I didn't really have an issue with like the education system as such. It wasn't that I hated learning. I just hated the thought of being trapped in that building and not being able to leave, and for various reasons. So I'll start by explaining my own story and see if it sounds familiar to you, because I imagine a lot of it will be fairly similar. I won't bother going into lots of details about why I became school phobic because number one, it's super complicated, and to be honest, I was so young that I don't even understand exactly why. Although I have, like vague memories and vague ideas. And even if I did understand it, I'm sure it wouldn't have taken the phobia away. I was still school phobic long after I had worked out, some of the reasons. And everyone's reasons will be different. Yours will be different to mine. Some of those reasons will have a particular like problem that you can pinpoint. Like maybe you don't like certain pupils there or teachers. Maybe you're worried about failing exams, or you feel you're not good enough, or maybe you feel that you're too clever and people, dislike you for that. There could be certain specific reasons that you'd like to be different. And for other people, the original reason might have even been forgotten or might have passed now. For example, you might have had anxiety about COVID and social distancing at school, but the fear and the phobia seems to now be stuck and you can't shake that off. So just know that that's really normal too. So if you're school phobic, I know exactly how you feel. The sick feeling just thinking about school, the dread of Sunday nights coming at the end of the weekend, knowing that Monday is the next day, counting down the hours when you are at school until that relief when the bell goes and you can go home. Um, the school holidays, knowing that the school holidays are coming to an end and you're going to have to go back to school. And just all that time trapped inside your own thoughts, day and night, going to sleep, worrying about school, waking up with it in your head first thing on your mind in the morning, and just wanting to go back to sleep and pretend that none of it was happening. Well, some of those might ring some bells for you. It didn't matter what anybody said to me, how irrational they made it seem that I was afraid of school, or how they tried to reason with me that it wasn't so bad. At the end of the day, fear is fear. Whether you're afraid of spiders or clowns or schools, whatever. If you're afraid of something, you're afraid of something. Just because someone else isn't and doesn't understand why that is, doesn't mean that you're wrong in any way or incorrect in your fears. If fear was a rational thing, everyone would be able to look at it clearly and nobody would have any issue with any sort of fears or phobias. So know that you are perfectly normal and sane to have a fear of something. Um, I couldn't manage a full day at school for most of my school life. My strategy for coping was that I had to go home at lunchtime. Sometimes I the whole class would be kept in for lunch, like because people have misbehaved or something, and we'd miss like half hour of lunch break, and I would still have to run home to my house, literally grab a packet of crisps, and then I'd have to turn around and run straight back, just to be out of school for that time was so important. So I understand that we all come up with really, different and maybe strange strategies. Hopefully now schools are a little bit better at, working with some pupils if you're lucky, but that doesn't mean that all schools are great, and it doesn't mean that their strategies work for you either. I had lots of illnesses resulting from my fear, so constantly feeling sick, sometimes actually throwing up, visiting the toilet in a real hurry, like 20 times if I had to go to school, awful back pains, headaches, feeling faint and dizzy, general anxiety for a lot of my life, pretending I was ill when I wasn't, so I didn't have to go to school. I imagine a lot of this sounds familiar to you. Right. How was I still school phobic 25 years later at the age of 25? That is a very good question. The interesting thing is that I very oddly became a school teacher. I was now like 25 or 26, and I just imagined that as an adult I wouldn't be school phobic anymore. Like after all, I'd gone to college, which wasn't bad because you know you could walk in and out as you wanted to. And I went to university, and that was the same. No one was making you be there. It was a choice. And if you wanted to leave in the middle of the lecture or the middle of the day, you just walked out. Um, so it was very different to school. I didn't have that feeling of being trapped somewhere that I didn't want to be. But of course, what I hadn't thought about was as a school teacher, you can't just walk out. You have to stay there and teach your classes and take registration and see your tutor group. And not only that, you have to sort of then stay in the building after everyone else has gone home. You've got to mark work and plan for the next day. So, short story is, I got a really unpleasant surprise to discover that I was still totally school phobic, age 25 or 26. And that was even more problematic in some ways because I'd never solved my school phobia whilst I was younger. And it was just waiting for me when I walked back through the school gates all those years later. Um, So, not surprisingly, the same symptoms, exactly the same symptoms came back. The bad back, I have to stop the car on the way to school. I'd have to get out and be sick because I felt so ill. Once, it's like funny now, but it wasn't at the time. I was so anxious that I nearly was sick over the register. Maybe you don't have like paper registers now, but you might do. We used to have like books, registers, and register all the kids. And I knew if I opened my mouth, I was so anxious and scared I was going to throw up all over the register. So it took me ages to get through the register that day. And one of the kids couldn't work out why I was going so slow. But the problem was I couldn't quit my job as a teacher because I had bills to pay. I had, a young daughter to feed. And so at that point, I realized I had to find other ways to work around this fear. I couldn't really even explain to anyone else what was going on. Like a school phobic teacher, I think people would have just laughed at me. So I spent a long time exploring all sorts of things until one day I was back at the doctor's again with another bad back and lots of anxiety. And he said he wasn't going to give me any more tablets for my bad back. I should try to learn meditation, which I thought was really weird. But the rest, as they say, is history. So forward wind quite a few years, and for a long time I have been helping other people work with their fears, their phobias, their anxieties, and the thoughts that they just can't get rid of. I've got a pretty good understanding of what was going on in my head and my body back then, and I wish that I could share some of that advice with a younger version of me so that they could work through that school phobia. Anyway, I can't go back in time, however much I want to, but hopefully I can share some of what I understand with you, and it might not be too late to help you out. In the next video, we're going to look at what the fear of school is actually made up of, as it is probably a little bit simpler and a little bit more complex than you imagine. And once we understand that fear, we can find much better ways of sorting it out and working with it rather than keep running away from it. Anyway, stay strong. You will survive. I promise. I survived, so you will. And hopefully in the next video we can get down into the nitty-gritty of the problem. All right.